Baby Ruth! Baby Ruth! Baby Ruth! It's a fucking shit show! What you think you see, what you think you hear, that's what it's about. Mood and atmosphere. No, it's fucking garbage. It's garbage. Mood and atmosphere. Now that I really like. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to see. Hey folks, how you doing? Dave McRae here. We're talking the Goonies today. I'm rocking my Goonies shirt. And obviously when people think of the Goonies, they think of sloth. And when you think of sloth, traditionally people tend to think of, hey you guys, which I completely understand. I do too. However, whenever I think of sloth, not only do I think of hey you guys, I also think of Baby Ruth, that scene in the movie where he's talking about the chocolate bar. It's fucking hilarious to me. It stuck with me ever since I was a kid. I think when I was a child, I'd, walk around, Baby Ruth. It's like, Dave, you can't walk around, quiet, Anyway, funny stuff. The Goonies is no doubt one of my favorite movies of all time. I was a kid of the 80s, a young boy of the 80s, and of course I was a teenager of the 90s, but I grew up through the 80s as a young boy. And the Goonies came out in 1985 when I was 6 years old, and I loved it. And it's probably, yeah, like I said, my favorite... one of my favorite movies of all time, but definitely my favorite kids' adventure movie from that era. And when I was in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago, I went to Amoeba. If you guys don't know Amoeba, it's on Sunset Boulevard. It was down the street from my hotel. And Amoeba's fucking amazing. I could literally spend all day there. I could live there. I could move in there. I could put a tent up and have, a sleeping bag and just be at Amoeba forever. No, it's awesome. Like they sell t-shirts and they sell hats and they sell doodads and trinkets and DVDs and CDs and vinyl and tapes and VHS used and new and lunchboxes and you name it. It's a nerd's orgasm. I'm telling you, if you have not been to Amoeba on Sunset Boulevard, while you've been in Los Angeles or Hollywood, you've got to go. And, I picked up the 25th anniversary edition of, the Goonies. It says, 25th anniversary. So obviously that would have been 2010. So this is about 8 years old now. This version, not necessarily this copy. Brand new, and it was cool. I don't have the Goonies on Blu-ray. I have the Goonies on DVD, but I don't have them on Blu-ray. So I thought I would pick them up on Blu-ray. But this is kind of cool because it's like a special edition, right? So when you open it up, we got One-Eyed Willie's, or the map to One-Eyed Willie. And then of course we have the Blu-ray right here, which is your standard Blu-ray. I mean, you could probably pick this up in a store on your own for half the price of what I paid to get it in all this shit, but come on. We're nerds and we love this shit, right? So, yeah, awesome stuff. That's the movie. And then, of course, it comes with a board game, a Goonies board game. Yeah, that's right. The board game. Goonies board game. It's pretty cool. Let me put that there. I'll open that up for you and show you in just a second. Comes with some storyboards. If you're a film nerd like me, storyboards are always cool to look at, especially ones from your favorite movies that you grew up with. I remember like just drooling over the storyboards for Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was a kid. Like I got my hands on it. I was like, oh, fuck, it's so amazing. Anyway, and then of course it also comes with this little book as well, which is really cool. And hey, there's Mr. Baby Ruth on the back there. Again, if you're a big nerd of the Goonies and you love the Goonies, you're going to love all this stuff. Like, this is just, it's nothing new that we haven't seen before with this kind of thing, but it's awesome. Like, I love when movies do this kind of shit. They put out, special booklets that show you the behind the scenes, and you get, the board game I couldn't give a shit about, but it's cool for just cool sake, I guess. But really awesome stuff. So yeah, let me put that back there. I'll just put this down here and let me show you. Now, I haven't opened up the board game, but this is sort of what's in it. You get the board, which of course is still wrapped up, but that would be it there. And then comes, of course, with Goonies cards, playing cards, obviously, that pertain to the game. But this is kind of funny. You can be, the characters from the movie. There's Mr. Corey Feldman there. Mr. Tommy Jarvis, folks. And there we go. Can you see that? It's kind of out of focus. But anyway, yeah, so all the characters are in there. And some gold coins and yeah, it's kind of, I guess it's not all 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like there's only about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, that's right, because they're either side. They're either side, I think. I think. Maybe they're not. No, they couldn't be. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Anyway, the characters are there. The board is there. I'm going to see if I can convince my girlfriend to play this with me. If not, I might have to resort to my cat. Anyway, yeah, so let's talk about the Goonies. But I don't want to specifically talk about the Goonies, the movie we know and love. I just want to quickly touch on this idea of a sequel to this 1985 film. When I was younger and I found out that they were thinking about doing a sequel, they've been thinking about doing a sequel to the Goonies for like the last 25 or 30 years. And it's never come to be. And there's various reasons for that. Some of the cast has no interest in returning, like Chunk, the guy who plays Chunk. I mean, maybe he does now, I don't know, but not too long ago. I mean, he's an entertainment lawyer now. I think he's an entertainment lawyer. I know he's a lawyer. And he hasn't been in acting in years. There's a few people in here that haven't done some acting in a long time. And Josh Brolin, of course, is arguably the most successful to come away from the Goonies. You could say Sean Astin as well. Sean Astin had a good run there with Rudy and with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and of course his little stint on the things that he's been in. But of course he hasn't really achieved the level that Josh Brolin has over the last 10 years or so. So, you know, but this idea of a Goonies sequel has been around for quite some time, and they've never been able to get it going. But I think to myself, well, what is this sequel? Like when I was younger, as I said, I was on board, but now I'm 40 years old now. It's kind of like, wow, what is it going to be about? I mean, when we look at this here, okay, here we are, right? So here's the Goonies. All these actors now are pretty much in their late 40s, early 50s. Okay. By the time they get a script together, green light it, go into pre-production, and actually get this thing going, if hypothetically they do, they might all be into their like mid to late 50s, or at least all in their 50s. Is the movie going to be about all of them, if you can get all them to come back? Is it going to be about them banding together again to go on an adventure? A little kind of awkward, right? I know what you're thinking. No, Dave, it's going to be about their kids. Okay, fine. But if they're all in their 50s, it's not out of the realm of probability that even their children by this point would be in their late teens, early 20s. They're not exactly Goonies age here. Okay, so let's say it's about their kids. Well, obviously, they're not going to be the focus. So they're going to be playing second fiddle to their kids that go on this adventure, right? And it's like, is that what we want? You know, because a Goonies sequel would be made purely for the nostalgia, purely for guys and gals like me, our age, right? In and around. Look, if you're a little bit older than me, if you're a little bit younger than me, that's who they'd make a sequel for. They're not making a sequel today for my buddy Bruce, who's got, they're not making it for his kids, okay? They're not. They don't care about it. They didn't grow up with it. My buddy Bruce's kids now are 17 and 15. But when he tried to show them the Goonies about 10 years ago, they didn't give a shit about it. They were like, well, what the hell is this? Like to them, it was like watching a movie for us from like the 50s, you know, because it's 30 years ago now. Well, in 1985, 30 years ago would have been 1955. You know, and to them, they're like, what is this? Like, it's old. It looks old. It's old. The special effects are old. What are we watching here? They don't care about it. So you're not making a Goonies movie for them. There's nobody today clamming for a Goonies sequel other than the parents that were kids at this point. So, you know, I just kind of think, okay, I don't want to see them running around on an adventure in their 50s. It just kind of feels lame. It feels forced. I have really no interest in seeing a Goonies adventure with their kids. And what? Like, how do their kids all know each other? Did none of them leave the town? Like, what, did they all live beside each other so their kids all grew up together? Like, I don't understand this. Did not one of them leave and go off to university somewhere and make a life for themselves, for fuck's sakes? So, you know, I just got to think about it. I'm like, you know, and I'm coming at this from the perspective of somebody that grew up with this movie. And, you know, so there's a bit of bias, here, I guess, but I don't, you know, a long time ago, I was like, yeah, and now I'm like, oh, I can see things a little more objectively and be like, yeah, no, it's a great story in and of itself. It's a complete story. You know, because this is about kids that band together, that call themselves the Goonies, band together because they didn't want to move. And the only way they felt that it was possible, they needed money. They needed the money to, their dad, look, Mikey, and Brad's dad was getting fucked over. They knew it. They knew he was being taken, for granted. And they knew that he was being, having the wool pulled over his eyes. They knew that. So they band together and they went on this crazy adventure that was just about chance, on the off chance that there is this treasure, and it worked out, and they got the money and they were able to actually stay where they were because they were able to get the money to do so. And of course, they also knew that the guys were full of shit and now they can prove it. That's it. That's the end of the story. I never got the sense that these kids were like going on these kind of adventures prior to this adventure. I never got that feeling. I never got the sense that, oh, this is what they were doing like every summer. No, it was circumstance. It was just like, wow. And it was kind of like a one and done thing. Like the odds of them doing this every summer is highly unlikely. I would only be this is how I would be interested, sincerely. Maybe, if Richard Donner, I think he's well into his 80s now. Is he not in his 80s now? Poor Dick Donner. He's got to be in his 80s now. Even Spielberg's in his 70s. Richard Donner, how old's Richard Donner now? Yeah, he's 88. Richard Donner's 88. Okay? Now, you know what I'm saying. Steven Spielberg's like 74 or something like that. How old's Spielberg here? Steven Spielberg is, I think he's 74. No, he's 71. Okay, he's 71. He's not 88, but the only way I would be mildly interested, curious about a Goonies sequel with this cast is if I heard that Spielberg was not producing it, directing it. And I don't think this is a movie that he has any interest in directing. He's past that kind of thing now. Kind of. I mean, Ready Player One was that young kid adventure. But I would be very curious if Spielberg threw caution to the wind and thought, yeah, what the fuck not? Why not? I'm older now. I've done a lot of shit. Yeah, you know what? I'll do a Goonies sequel. Because Spielberg has the sensibilities. He makes those like the child youthful magic. He can do that. Outside of, I'm not saying nobody else could do it. But to get me curious about a sequel, that would get me curious. He's not. He has no interest in doing that. I'd be stunned. No interest in doing that. So I think you just leave it alone. It's a great story in and of itself. It's a great kids movie from the 80s. It's timeless in many respects. There's certain things that are dated in here, but the adventure is sort of timeless. Not that, well, not exact. Kids aren't exactly going on pirate adventures and treasure hunts today, but they weren't really in the 80s either. So, I mean, it's got that. It's a great story. It's a great adventure story that does not need a sequel. And I'd be so worried if I heard that they were all coming back. Like, oh, God. Jeez. Anyway. My name's Dave McRae. Comment below and let me know your thoughts. Do you want a Goonies sequel? Were you a big fan of the Goonies? Or were you not that big of a fan of the Goonies and you didn't kind of get to see the Goonies till later in life? Like me, I was not really a big fan of the Neverending Story. I never saw it till later in life, maybe 10 years ago. There were some kids that were really into the Neverending Story and Labyrinth, and then some kids that were really into the Goonies and the Monster Squad, and then there were some kids that there was overlap. I was one of those kids that kind of was over here, and I didn't get to see some of those other movies till later in life. Were you one of those kids? Comment below and let me know. Do you think there should be a Goonies sequel? If there should be, or if you'd like one, tell me how you would do it. Tell me how you would do it that you think would give the best chances of success. I don't mean like $10 billion success. I just mean that it's good. It's good, and it's reasonably successful at the box office. It's not a bomb and it's not hated. Tell me how you would do that. I would love to know. If you want to follow me on Facebook, you can at facebook.com/manythingsdavemcrae. The link is in the description. That's where I tend to post in the meantime and in between time when I'm not posting here. If you want to help support the channel each and every month via Patreon and get in on some Patreon goodies, I'm still relatively new to Patreon, only about 4 months or so, 4 or 5 months. So I do appreciate the patience for those who are there, because it's constantly evolving and we got some good stuff coming. And if you want to get in on that, the link is in the description as well. And other links are there too. So yeah, in the meantime and in between time, I'm going to pop this in now and watch it. I will talk to you guys soon. Baby Ruth!